Greetings, travelers, and welcome to Nexus, a far-flung Elden planet hidden amongst the stars for centuries. With soaring vistas, awe-inspiring landmarks, and breathtaking outlooks, it's an entrepreneur's dream. An explorer's haven, scientists' Mount Everest, or maybe just a place to call home. No need to worry about local wildlife or more unscrupulous characters, because Protostar will be there upon your arrival to furnish you with the latest and greatest of bug-smashing, oath-disintegrating weaponry, compactable survival necessities, and a compass. For a small nominal fee, of course. Please make sure to avoid any unwanted attention from opposing factions, and you just might find that Nexus is the home you've been waiting for. Or perhaps, the home that has been waiting for you. Wildstar came out in the summer of 2014, and it was my first voyage without any of my brothers as company. Having started down this path about 10 years ago, I think the genre was starting to become a little stale. Coupled with the landscape changing as the free-to-play model was picking up steam, and having chased my feelings from one game to the next, I was beginning to feel like MMOs had run their course. Be that as it may, I was willing to give it one more go because I absolutely loved the art direction of Wildstar. It was silly, exaggerated, bouncy, and colorful, all inherent features of its art style which coalesced with the gameplay and storylines that I found endearing. The premise revolves around a rediscovered planet called Nexus, once inhabited by a highly advanced alien race known as the Elden, who mysteriously disappeared while conducting scientific discoveries. The two opposing factions of this microcosm are attempting to lay claim to Nexus for drastically different reasons, which causes a sort of Wild West scenario of settlements, discoveries, war, and adventures. The game itself wasn't necessarily groundbreaking, but it did cherry-pick some of the best elements of MMOs and expanded upon, improved, or made uniquely their own. Choosing a faction to stand behind and character creation is not too dissimilar from other games, but where it differs is when you are given the option to choose a path, which is basically an extracurricular activity meant to complement a player's preferred playstyle. Explorer for players who enjoy wandering off the beaten path. Scientists for inquisitive players who wish to learn everything about the game world. Settler for players who enjoy social aspects of MMOs and wish to enhance that experience. And finally, Soldier for players who find the most enjoyment when engaged in combat. Each path had its own side quests, scenarios, and sometimes buffs or equipment that added flavor and small benefits. Nothing crazy, but it added to the leveling and endgame experience, allowing you to change it up every now and again. I was always partial to Explore, because I love when MMOs add platforming puzzles and rewards for deferring from the main theme park attractions. For anyone that's a completionist or altaholic, Paths offered a way of changing up the monotony that some people experience when engaging with MMOs, and I thought it was a cool feature that allowed players to connect with the world and story without being forced to do so. Aside from paths and a platforming style of movement with double jumps and sprinting, in my opinion, two of the major ways that Wildstar tried to set itself apart was with its combat and player housing. Tab targeting and auto attack was more or less out the window. You attacked by using abilities and making sure your target was within the telegraph that your ability shadowed on the ground, and it was the same for the enemies. Well, the enemies did have an auto attack, but as you progressed in levels, they would start producing more intricate and complicated special attacks with telegraphs to coincide. There were also a lot of environmental additions to the telegraph system that could either aid in your efforts of battle or hurt you in the same swing. It went a long way with making the combat and world feel more alive and interactive, unless you struggled with the telegraph system, in which case it probably just frustrated the crap out of you. I personally like it. And although it made some scenarios quite hectic, I can see how with some adjustments over time, it could have been a fantastic evolution for a genre that is currently in a dire need for some innovation to recapture audiences. Player housing was also a key component to what made Wildstar special at the time. It was instanced, so everyone kind of had their own floating plot of land on which you could build, upgrade, and decorate a house with items crafted and found throughout the world that offered a more rest experience for leveling than any other part of the game. You could also add crafting stations, gardens, mines, a personal raid portal, and training dummies if you preferred some quiet time during your profession training sessions. But you could also open up your land to friends or the public if you wanted some company. Systems were in place that allowed these friends to gather from your plots if you couldn't log in for a while, and they earned a small amount of money for doing so. I have always enjoyed the downtime of walking around and personalizing a private space in video games. From Suikoden castles and Mass Effect spaceships meant as makeshift housing for your companions, to Skyrim and Minecraft housing where you can freely decorate your quarters. All different, but similar in the sense of offering a place for the player to take a breather from questing, battling, or whatever else is going on. Why something like this hasn't been added to more MMOs over the years is beyond me. It reeks of personalized choices that a lot of players love, and cosmetic microtransaction gold that game companies love. It's almost a win-win if done correctly. It's just unfortunate that Wildstar was released either too late after the MMO spike or too early, depending on how you look at it, as the game was shut down in November of 2018, just 4 short years after launching. I think it did a great job at offering players choices, creating vivid NPCs and landscapes, housing, responsive combat, fun animations, and so on. But it just wasn't enough to make up for the poor delivery of story through small text windows, an incredibly difficult dungeon and raid system that catered to an entirely different audience than what was advertised, and waiting too long to switch over to a free-to-play model. It's almost as if the game direction, the artists, and the UI UX creators were never on the same page as to what the game should really look like, feel like, and be. I mean, I remember this game, along with many others at the time, touted as WoW killers, the ad nauseum battle cry of haters for the ages, and it failed just like many before and after it. Now, out of all the cancelled MMOs that I've played over the years, I think Wildstar would have the best opportunity to succeed if released today, albeit with some slight changes to the problems that led to its untimely demise. I think the combat, art style, and game design would be enough to garner a healthy audience that may have been too jaded and worn out at the time of its original release. But we will probably never know. As for my own experience, well, I quit playing well before it was ever closed down, and as much as I enjoyed myself, it just wasn't the same without family or guildmates. So, after realizing what he was missing, the Lost Traveler took leave of the MMO landscape for quite a long time. It wasn't an easy decision, and he would often reminisce about past experiences, but it was never quite enough to pull him back in. They simply were memories that were fun to relive with his brothers over a couple of drinks and family get-togethers. It doesn't mean that he was done for good. Oh no. Just that it was time to clear his head and perhaps come back with a more mature point of view when the time felt right.